there, welcome back to another Consultant Proficiency Resources Moral Leadership Coaching Tidbit, where we are breaking through traditional leadership style for optimum success. I'm Cheryl, Managing Partner and Founder for CPR, and here at CPR we resuscitate one business, one leader at a time. CPR is a business ministry whereby we integrate biblical or Torah principles with business principles for optimum success. So if you're new to this platform, a very hearty CPR LC welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And we pray that you continue along with us on this transformational journey, whether you're a woman, minority-owned business, small business leader, even a corporate executive, an educator, college student, or an aspiring entrepreneur. If in 2023 you know better and therefore you decide to do better and you decide to elevate your leadership style, lock it in right here at CPR More Leadership Coaching Tidbit. We're here to show you how, looking at free resources available to you, but you must do the work. So it's important to do the work. So again, please hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so you'll be advised of all future uploads. And for those of you who've joined us from quarter 2022 during our pilot series and you're chugging along, you're doing the work, we commend you, because we say James 2:26, faith without works is dead. You must do the work. There are no shortcuts. What you put in is what you're going to get out of it. According to James Clear, he gave us a formula where we can quantify the work that you're doing. And he indicated if you do 1% of the work daily for 365 days, you could have a net gain or improve by 37%. So CPR challenged you and said, what if you would have put in 5%, 10%, 15%, 20% of the work daily? That's a huge improvement as you continue to elevate and do your faith walk. So we commend you for first making that decision, investing in you, and we encourage you to share this platform with members of your team so they too can move along with you. Remember, do not be equally yoked. As you elevate, you want your team to elevate with you. And you can do so by simply giving them this free resource where they can view, do the work. You can bring in certain sessions within a meeting. Dedicate 15, 20 minutes of your meeting to the CPR More Leadership Coaching Tidbit. And this is a way, this will be your litmus test, whether they're doing the work, and hold them accountable as you continue to move along on this transformational journey. So now that we've done a little bit of an overview and we have come into the intro of episode number 12, and the theme is we are considering alleviating the burdens of business ownership. As business leaders, yes, there are burdens, not just burdens of your personal life, but there are burdens of being a business leader. And as always, as we continue to pay tribute in the month of March, we will continue to look at some very wise women who have done the work, who have led the way. And there are a few things we can learn from them. So let's begin. The first quote, we want to consider the biblical principle, and it's taken from 1 Kings chapter 10 and 2 Chronicles chapter 9, and that is the storyline of Queen Sheba, otherwise known as the Queen of the South. Queen Sheba sought wisdom. Proverbs 2:2 tells us to incline our ear to wisdom. Queen Sheba knew who the wisest man on the earth was, and she did a journey from her kingdom to that of King Solomon to find out, to ask, make inquiries, and she was able to get those questions answered. Now, to be wise, the first step to be wise is to know what you don't have, what you don't possess. And the goal here, once your tank is empty, we mentioned that in the last episode, it's about refueling your tank, and that you replace it with wisdom, fruits of the Spirit. But you first have to know what you're lacking in order to know what you're going to refuel with, and she certainly did. So the queen was wealthy. She understood that. She came bearing innumerable expensive gifts to King Solomon because she knew the value of wisdom. And let's just say Queen of the South, if we consider Proverbs 16:16, it reads, How much better to get wisdom than gold, to get insight rather than silver? So she came bearing a lot of expensive gifts, but she knew it was better to get wisdom than gold, to get insight rather than silver. And of course, King Solomon, very gracious, obliged her every question, and she left with her heart content. And wow, as a business leader, wow and wow, right? CPR recommends honing your craft, whatever that is, and seeking wisdom always. And we know when we pray and we ask for wisdom, it will be bestowed upon us. So it's there for our asking. Make sure you seek it. Another way of doing so is ensuring that your company, your organization has two CEOs. You heard me? Two CEOs. The first one being the man above, your creator, knowing that he's all knowing, having him as your first CEO. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. He will order your steps in the right direction. You become his deputy CEO. So whatever he instructs you to do, you can do in prayer and faith. Just a little tidbit from CPR. Now let's consider a woman of contemporary times. And actually we have two quotes. And one is an honorary mention just because it deals with a formula, a business principle we spoke to many times on this platform. And this is no other coming from the most decorated American gymnast with more than 24 Olympic and World Championships to her name. Miss Simone Biles was born on March 4th, 1997 in Columbus, Ohio. And she was raised by her maternal grandparents. Can we seek and talk about wisdom? Being raised by her grandparents, she was at the knees of her grandparents, I'm sure, most of her childlike life. And she garnered a lot of wisdom, listening and paying attention. And they devoted a lot of time and energy poured back into this young lady. And she knew it very well. So one of her quotes, according to Miss Biles, I would rather regret the risk that didn't work out than the chances I didn't take at all. I'll repeat that. I'd rather regret the risk that didn't work out than the chances I didn't take at all. Let's break it down. It's really two separate statements in one. And those are the principles. Can you guess what those principles are we're alluding to? Okay, if you guess the acts of commission versus the acts of omission, you are absolutely right. Kudos to you. And good for you for staying the course and documenting those principles, because this is something you'll continue to do throughout your leadership journey. So the first part of her quote, I'd rather regret the risk that didn't work out. That means she took risk. She assumed risk. Business is about assuming risk. Starting a business is about taking risk. And for her as a pro athlete, that means physical risk every day, doing those jumps, doing those lands, and exercising, doing it day in and day out, putting in, I'm sure, more than 1% of the work for 365 days. My understanding, the pro athletes work more than 10, 12 hours a day in and day out, to sharpen and hone their skills. And the other part of her quote is, then the chances I didn't take at all. That's the acts of omission, doing nothing at all. Leaving money on the table, leaving creativity on the table because you failed to act. You failed to do anything, nothing at all. So it's important to do acts of commission, which is trial and error, which you should be aware of at this point in time. We have used the acts of commission or trial and error in many of our episodes because it's so important. And then acts of omission, doing nothing at all, not assuming risk. It's like leaving money on the table. It's equivalent to leaving your creativity, your next best idea on the table for someone else to take. Don't do it. It's equivalent to business sabotage. And coming from a world-class gymnast, Miss Biles certainly knows a thing or two about taking risk. Leaders are called to assume risk, not to be risk averse. So we're not saying be careless and mindless. We ask you to weigh the odds. We ask you to do convergent thinking, critical thinking, bring in your best team to help you with your decision, but do something to decide whether it's good for you or not. Not every opportunity might be beneficial to you, but you would know it until you do the work. So be mindful of that. So operate in wisdom. Now, the second quote is from Lena Mary Calhoun Horne, otherwise known as the legendary, iconic Lena Horne. Born in 1917 in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn, New York. That's correct. I worked many years in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and what I didn't know that at some point in time it was considered the creme de la creme of the black elite. So Miss Lena Horne was born to well-educated parents and lived in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, New York, and that was considered an upper stratum of black New Yorkers then. She was an American dancer, singer, actress, and civil rights activist, and her career spanned a lifetime for some, which is about 70 years. Starred in many films, television shows, theater, and her quote reads, "It's not the load that breaks you down, it's the way you carry it." I repeat it. It's not the load that breaks you down, it's the way you carry it. And the way you carry it, I would say, is a choice, right? Whether it's emotional burden, whether it's a physical burden, whether it's work-related burden, and how you choose to deal with it. Perspective. In the last episode, we spoke about your attitude perspective, not your aptitude is what's going to give you the altitude to soar, right? So based on your perspective, you'll know how to handle and carry that burden. So let's consider some burdens as a business leader. Forbes 2021 article tells us that taxes remain number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in terms of burdens for small businesses. In fact, 77% of small business owners reported that federal business income taxes weigh very heavily on them. And other burdens include, if you have employees, it would be payroll, which came in at 69%. Then we had at 66% state and local income taxes, property taxes. Then you have business taxes, both state and local, and then the complexity of the taxes. So it's important to help alleviate that burden by really hiring a competent, proficient CPA, certified public accountant. And this tidbit is certainly timely, being that we're in tax season. And if you're like me, you're possibly kind of waiting around a couple more days, but get it done. So for you, does it hold true? I can certainly see how it can be a burden, whether we're aware of it or not. Sometimes we have burdens and we're not cognizant of it because it's somewhere way in the back, but it is weighing us down. And we first have to be mindful of it, acknowledge it, then attempt to transfer it. And we're going to show you how to do that as you continue your faith walk. Before that, we also want to acknowledge, as women business leaders, University of Pennsylvania indicated that women also have additional burdens, including maintaining their home, health, work, economic well-being for a lot of the single moms. And then you have domestic responsibilities, whether it's the family, including the kids and homework and sports. And then you have to consider those who are taking care of elderly parents. All of the above, it becomes a burden on that one person. And then in the 2018, there's a 2018 article that was done by the Business Journal that highlighted 7 additional burdens of a business owner. And that's the burden of being focused. When you're not focused, that becomes a burden. That's when you're all over the place. You have to stay focused. Don't drift. That can lead to a cumbersome process. The burden of hiring, if you don't have the HR skill set, it can become burdensome hiring the right person to be part of your team. Then you have the burden of compensating people, knowing what that right compensation looks like in today's market can be challenging. But just be mindful in terms of the skill sets that you're requiring. And also consider, if you're looking at experience over generation, whether you're looking at an I generation, someone just out of college versus someone who worked 30, 40 years with the experiences, you must be prepared to make a decision to pay for those experiences. The burden of coaching versus training is very important. If you're trying to recruit someone to bring on your team, you certainly have to coach them and train them so that they can understand your organizational culture, which is very important. And part of that, and this is why CPR LLC does these specific leadership tidbits, it's really for you and your team so that as you continue to elevate, they're elevating with you. Do not be unequally yoked. You got to make sure that your team is exposed to the culture that you're trying to foster within your organization. So introduce them to the CPR More Leadership Coaching Tidbit. Again, it's free. And you can, the last 10-15 minutes of your meeting, you can go to particular episodes and ask certain questions and see what they have gleaned from that. That would hold them more accountable for going through the series while helping them. Again, remember, they must also apply the work. And we know a formula from Mr. James Clear. You must do minimum 1% daily as you continue to do your march. Then we're looking at managing activities day to day in and of itself as a business leader versus if you were in corporate, you were still responsible for, if you're in management, a particular department. But when you are the CEO, you wear 50 million hats. And you know at some point that there's one area that is suffering. So that becomes a burden. You have the burden of implementing technology that I can relate to I can connect with 100%. There's so many different programs, and there's a new program birthed every day. And they're all number one, they're all the best, they all can do the trick. You have 30 days to make up your mind, and then you forget that you registered with a particular program. So now you're paying for 5, 6, 7 different programs to do the same thing because you might have forgotten to discontinue the service that you subscribe to. So be mindful of that. And it definitely is a burden with all the technology. And if you're not mindful, it can lead to burnout. So be sure to manage your technology. And then the burden of learning from data. I'm a data-driven person. I love data analysis and see the beauty. A former professor used to say, data can sing, and I can see clearly that it can. And it's a beautiful song if you understand it. If not, it becomes a burden. So that I understand. If it's not your forte, it becomes a burden. So you have to be mindful of that and be able and be willing to invest in a company or invest and recruit an individual who can help alleviate this burden. CPR provided you with solutions. So be sure to check out our Non-Toxic Tuesday, March 14th blog posting on these very 7 problems and burdens. And we highlighted the solutions for them as well. In the interest of time, we did not include the solutions. We want to link you to our blogs to make sure you check it out. And the reality is, if you're on your faith walk, we should all know how we are called to carry our burdens. We are told, according to Psalms 55:22, cast your burdens upon the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never allow the righteous to be shaken. So it's important to cast your burdens, and that means really transferring ownership. Your burden, go like this, spiritually, and cast it over to your Lord. It's important to know that your mountain will soon look like your molehill, or maybe just a speck of dust that you can blow, if you were to transfer your burden onto the Most High, to your Creator, because we are called to do so. Faith Journal Walk said it best. I love the way they recommend doing the transfer. Just like a snake shed its skin, we can shed our burdens. I love that. So shed your burdens. Transfer your burden. Shed your burdens onto the Most High, your Creator. So because you're no longer trying to do everything on your own, understand that there's a bountifulness that surrounds us at this point in time. So we must tap into it. So when your heart and mind is at peace, some may say total shalom, you can begin to hear the message. Hence the reason CPR says have 2 CEOs. The God of Israel being your CEO, and then you being the deputy CEO. And following the instructions that you were directed to do, because he ultimately has the wisdom. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. So if you do so, you know you're heading in the right direction as you navigate the terrain called life in the business realm. In conclusion, we know that situations and trials come against us, but great strength and grace operate in the life of those who know their Creator. It starts with humility, of course. We must approach as children, knowing you can trust the one who created you. You cannot hold your burden alone. You're not meant to. You need to transfer or shed your burdens onto the Most High, the God of Israel. And we're going to conclude with two quotes coming from First Peter 5, 6 and 7. And it reads, "Therefore humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you." And then the other one comes from Philippians 4, verses 6 and 7, and it reads, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God." Verse 7, "And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." And that concludes episode 12. Episode 12 of CPR Moral Leadership Coaching Tidbit, and the theme, alleviating the burdens of business ownership. If at this point in time you have not committed to doing the work and not committed to subscribing, we recommend that you do so, and you can start that commitment by simply hitting that subscribe button, and of course supporting small businesses. It doesn't cost you a thing, just by supporting small businesses. And if you desire to elevate your style, doing the work day in and day out. I'm Cheryl. Thank you again for viewing episode number 12, and I look forward to seeing you in episode number 13. Stay blessed.